I hate those bad hair days. Well, dear friends in Christ, grace to you and peace. Amen. There's a story about a woman who was rushing home from a doctor's appointment, and the doctor had been a little bit delayed at the hospital. The lab work took a little bit longer than usual. By the time she left the clinic, she was way behind schedule, and she still had to pick up her prescription and her children from the babysitter and home to fix dinner before she had to rush to the prayer meeting at church that night. As she pulled into the Fred Meyer parking lot, the windows of heaven opened up, and there was a huge downpour of rain. And while she usually wasn't the one to bother God with her problems, she began to look for a parking space right by the front door. And with all the rain and the hurry, she said, Lord, you know the kind of day I've had and how there's still an awful lot to do. Dear God, please grant me a parking space close to the door so I don't get soaked. And just at that instant, the words were hardly out of her mouth where a car pulled out in a prime parking space in a parking lot. She pulled right in and said, oh, never mind, dear Lord, something just came up. It's kind of an amusing story, but how often do we ask God for something and then when we receive it, we behave as if it's kind of an unusual circumstance and we don't give credit to where credit was due. I like that saying. What if you woke up today and only had the things you gave thanks for yesterday? We take so many things for granted. That's kind of what was happening in our gospel for today, the story of the 10 lepers. 10 of those people were sick with an incurable disease. They were marked as untouchable. They were kicked out of fellowship with the normal people without leprosy. They only had to associate with only those in the leper colony. They begged at a distance, and everything they needed was something that someone else gave them. As they prayed out to Jesus, it was probably a long-distance prayer because they couldn't come close to him. In fact, sometimes when people walked past leper colonies in those days, they would spit so that the disease of the leprosy wouldn't enter into their bodies. The lepers cried out, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. It was a cry that Jesus heard from whatever distance he was from them. He tells them to go and show themselves to their priests, and importantly, as they went, they were healed. As they went, they were healed. They looked at their hands and their skin was restored. They stroked their face, the sores had been healed. They picked up the bandages and there was no sign of decay. Their fingertips and their ears were back. As they went, obeyed what Jesus said, they were healed. 9 of them kept going without a backward glance, and those 9 seemed to puzzle Jesus because he said, where are the 9? Where did they go? Why didn't they return to give thanks? Now, think about this on sermons that you've heard on this text. The 9 who didn't return have received much disdain in many preachings and sermons over the years. They're the 9 bad boys of ingratitude. It's an easy sermon to preach, and I, over the years, have preached those kind of sermons. Don't be like the 9. Today I'd like to give those non-returning 9 lepers a little bit of a break. I think I've been too hard on them over the years, and actually there might be some really good reasons why they didn't return to give thanks. I mean, think about the first leper. Could have been very simple. He was just frightened. Pure and simply, he didn't understand what had happened to him. Well, he got used to his leprosy, and all of a sudden it wasn't there, and it scared the pants off of him. And so he was looking for some place to hide because Jesus just scared him. Second leper might have been offended because he had been not required to do something before he was healed. Some people, I think that they have to do something in order to get something. It's just the way their world works. And so this healing was just too easy. They had been sick for so long, months, years, and all of the praying and fasting and righteous living seemed to be the requirement to be healed. And this person's motto, maybe the second leper, was you get what you pay for. He hadn't done anything, so Jesus offended him. The third leper might have been the kind that had realized too late that he didn't want to be healed. I mean, he had learned to cope with his sickness. He had learned to live with his leprosy, although he had been fervent plea to be healed. Now maybe he saw that his sickness, his leprosy, had really become his self-definition. He was comfortable with his idea of suffering. He was a leper. He knew who he was. Jesus took away a core part of his identity. Think maybe the fourth leper. He just forgot. I mean, maybe he just forgot. He was so happy that he didn't return to give thanks. He just forgot. I mean, have you ever forgotten to give thanks? You just forget. The fifth leper might have been one of those people who was unable to say thank you. One of those people for whom a thank you was just not in their vocabulary. He had not been saying it for so long that it was a concept that was just foreign to him. To him it was like speaking a foreign language, and so he didn't know how to say it. The sixth leper might have been a woman separated from her family for 10 years because of her leprosy. We assume they were male, but women got leprosy then too. She was now free to rejoin her husband and children, and she scurried off home so thankful. She was like been in captivity for long. She just ran home to be with her husband and kids. The seventh leper, maybe he was one of those who didn't believe that Jesus had anything to do with his healing. He knew that healing had taken place, but he maybe thought that there was a perfectly intelligible reason for what happened. And so like the woman with the parking place, he just didn't make the connection. I mean, it's understandable. Maybe the eighth leper was feeling that his healing was just a part of a natural progression of him taking responsibility for his health. He'd been taking vitamins and gluten-free oatmeal and herbal drugs and, working out and eating right and exercising and taking his fish oil pills and all of that. So why shouldn't he take responsibility for his actions? He had been healing himself after all. Why give thanks to God? Ninth leper, who knows? Who knows? Maybe multiple reasons. I mean, he probably had his own reason. Maybe it was a good reason. Why didn't he give thanks? Well, maybe they're not the bad boys of ingratitude after all. Maybe they're just like us. Just like us. I mean, how often don't we give thanks for all of the blessings of life? Now, we'll return to that in a moment, but let's dive a little bit more deeply into the story as Luke tells it in chapter 17, into a couple of words that form the center of the drama when the lepers stood, ostracized, hurt, needy on the fringes, unwanted, kept at an arm's length from the religious and societal circles. They said the words, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Simple words. We've heard those words for years. They cry out, but there's a whole lot behind those words in the way that Luke tells the story. Think about those words. Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. They named his name Jesus, a person who they had heard about, who had called, gathered, taught, invited people to follow him. Jesus was a person who lived and who showed people the way that God intended for people to live. And when they called him Jesus, it shows that they knew him. They had heard about him. They knew him as a person. Well, what's fascinating is they also call him Master. They call him Master. Now, to understand the richness of that word, you have to look at the use of the title Master in the Gospel of Luke. Luke uses it very specifically in this leper story. It's only in the Gospel of Luke. For Luke, titles are very, very important. And the title Master is not used very often in the Gospel of Luke. And when it is, it's used for very specific purposes. The first time Master is used as a title for Jesus is that Jesus is walking along the shores of the Sea of Galilee. The disciples had fished all night and not caught anything, so Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Put out your nets into the deep and let them down for a catch." And Peter said, "Master, we've toiled all night and not caught anything." Nonetheless, they put down the nets, and remember, the nets were filled to overflowing. second time it's used is a little while later. Jesus was with the disciples in a boat, and a great storm brewed. The waves were boiling. Jesus was asleep on a cushion in the back of the boat. The disciples woke him up and said twice, "Master, Master, do you not care if we're perishing?" Jesus stood up and calmed the sea and the waves. Several days later, Jesus was walking through the crowds, and remember, a woman with a flow of blood came and touched the hem of his garment. She was healed, and Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And Peter responded by saying, "Master, there's too many people here to know." Then the woman turned and knelt before him and was healed. The next time it's used is on the Mount of Transfiguration. Remember that? Peter with James and John up on a mountain. A cloud overshadowed them. And Peter says, "Master, it is well that we're here." And then the voice comes out of the cloud, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." Those are the only times in the Gospel of Luke where the title Master is used. So, continuing with this, keep with me. The two things to know about the title Master is that first, when Jesus is called Master, it's only used by the disciples who believed in him. The title Master is a confession of faith. Notice second, that when the title Master is used, right after that, something extraordinary happens. A fishing net overflows, a storm is calmed, a woman is healed, the voice of God comes out of a cloud. When Jesus is called Master by those who believe in him, something extraordinary happens. But that's what's happening with the disciples, with the lepers. They cried out, one of only 5 times that the title Master is used in the Gospel of Luke, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." They named his name, and people who knew him, they confessed him as Master, a title only used by those who believed in him. Somehow, I conclude from that, somehow, these lepers were believers. Somehow, these lepers were believers. But even more than that, these believer lepers also accepted their own powerlessness. Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Have mercy on us. These lepers who were used to begging for mercy, they had come to the end of their resources. They had literally nothing. They recognized that they could not do anything by themselves, and that there was only one person, one way in which forgiveness and healing could come. Have mercy on us means that they accepted who they are and they confessed who God is. Have mercy on us means that they recognize that it's God from whom all blessings flow. All blessings. And that they were the ones like us who really ultimately can only sit and beg and out of our need cry out to God for mercy. So what's the point of the story of the 9 lepers who were healed and didn't return? Well, there was a variety of reasons why they might have been going home without giving thanks. Hiding in fear, refusing to believe, offended at what they might call cheap grace, lost in their own leprosy, unable to say thank you. Who knows all the reasons why they didn't? But perhaps the point of the story is when Jesus says to the one returning leper, "Rise, go your way, your faith has made you well." It means that the 9 lepers, even though they had made a confession in Jesus, even though they knew they were healed, they were not quite well yet. Being well means giving thanks. Maybe the point is to be made well, and to be healed is making thanks not just something that we do, but something that we are. Not just thanksgiving, but thanks living. It's all rolled into one, knowing that God blesses us in so many ways that we don't even recognize from day to day, and that to be truly faithful means to be, at our core, truly thankful. And I think that underscores the importance of choosing gratitude and thankfulness as a way of life, not only for the big things in life, but also for the little things. We can be thankful for big things like baptism and faith in church, but also for little things like the fresh morning crisp air in Central Oregon, the crisp feel of clean sheets, the smile of a baby. We can be thankful for big things like comfort in a time of trouble, hope in the face of death, but also for little things like Hood River strawberries, burgers on the grill, cold lemonade. And we can be thankful for big things like freedom that we enjoy on this 4th of July weekend, for the sacrifice of military men and women who have fought in giving us freedom, and also for little things like that fresh smell of coffee in the morning, clean socks after a pedicure. I had one 6 weeks ago. Margaret gave it to me. It was a text message from a son or daughter. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all of his benefits. And be thankful. Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Give thanks with a grateful heart. Let not only the blessedness of a grateful life, thankful heart, and an attitude of gratitude be a big thing in your life, but a little thing, recognizing the multitude of things that God gives us, each and every one of us, day after day. Let's close in prayer. Gracious God, giver of all good things, we thank you today for the many and various blessings which you have so graciously showered on us. Dear God, lead us to be more and more aware